400 BCE, empty Thracian peninsula. Before there was a city, there was only a peninsula, a forested rocky promontory jutting into the water where Europe ends and Asia begins.
In 657 BCE, a Greek sailor named Byzas led a small fleet from Megara across the Aegean. He had been told by the oracle at Delphi to found a city opposite the city of the blind. When he saw this peninsula, with BCE, Greek Byzantium established. For 2 centuries, Byzantium grew quietly, a prosperous Greek trading colony. The white marble temple on the Acropolis catching the Bosphorus light. Ships from the Black Sea carrying grain, timber, and fish passed through the strait. Every ship paid a toll to Byzantium. The city grew rich on the water, but it was still just a small Greek colony on a strategic hilltop. Its greatest days were not even imaginable yet. He had no idea what he had started. Then, one morning, the Bosporus filled with ships. Alexander the Great, 22 years old, was crossing from Europe into Asia with his army. As his fleet passed through the strait, he stood at the bow of his ship and threw his spear into the Asian soil. He was claiming Asia. The little colony of Byzantium watched from its hilltop as the greatest conqueror in history passed through its waters. Neither knew that one day, this peninsula would produce a conqueror to rival even Alexander. In 330 CE, the Roman Emperor Constantine stood on this peninsula and made a decision that changed the world. He would move the capital of the Roman Empire here. He razed the small Greek city. He built on an imperial scale. The Hippodrome, the largest entertainment venue in the ancient world. The Column of Constantine, grand forums and palaces. He called it Constantinople. In 626 CE, the city faced its greatest test yet. A combined force of Persians and Avars besieged Constantinople simultaneously from land and sea. The Persians stood on the Asian shore, visible from the city walls. The Avars attacked from the land. And then, the Byzantines deployed their secret weapon, Greek fire. A liquid fire that burned on water. A weapon so devastating that entire enemy fleets were consumed. The siege failed. The walls held. The city survived. But in the deserts of Arabia, a new force was rising. In 537 CE, the Emperor Justinian completed a building that made the entire ancient world fall silent. The Hagia Sophia. A dome so large that the engineers who built it did not know how it stayed up. In 1204 CE, the most shocking betrayal in medieval history, the Fourth Crusade, launched to fight Muslims in the Holy Land, turned its swords on Constantinople instead. The Venetians, who financed the crusade, wanted the city's wealth. The Crusaders broke through the seawalls. They sacked the greatest Christian city on earth. Churches were looted, libraries burned. By the 14th century, Constantinople was a ghost of its former self. A city that once held 1 million people now held perhaps 50,000. Large sections of the city lay abandoned and ruined. Grass grew in the old forums. The Hagia Sophia still dominated the skyline. The seawalls still stood. But inside those walls, an empire was dying. In 1452, Sultan Mehmed II did something that sent a message the Byzantines could not misread. He built a fortress on the European shore of the Bosphorus, directly across from another fortress on the Asian shore, completing control of the strait. He built it in 4 months. 4 months! One of the most formidable fortresses in the medieval world. When the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI protested, Mehmed ignored him. The prophecy was about to be fulfilled. The most wonderful army was assembling. In April 1453, the defenders on the sea walls of Constantinople looked out at the Bosphorus and could not believe what they saw. Hundreds of Ottoman warships. But the defenders had one advantage. Across the Golden Horn Inlet, they had stretched a massive iron chain blocking the harbor entrance. No ship could pass. The Golden Horn shore was safe. Then, Mehmet did something that made the Byzantines doubt their own eyes. He had his engineers grease the land with tallow and build wooden rollers, and in a single night, he dragged 70 warships up and over the Galata Hill and down into the Golden Horn. The young sultan rode into the city on a white horse. He was 21 years old. At the gates of the Hagia Sophia, he dismounted. He bent down. He took a handful of earth and poured it over his head in an act of humility before Allah. Within hours of the conquest, a temporary wooden minaret was erected beside the Hagia Sophia, and the adhan rang out from the greatest building in the Christian world, now the greatest mosque in the Islamic world. The first Jumu'ah prayer in the Hagia Sophia was led by Mehmet himself, in a building that had stood for 916 years as the heart of Byzantine Christianity. The words of Allah now echoed under that extraordinary dome. A new era had begun. In the decades after the conquest, Mehmed rebuilt the depleted city aggressively. He brought people from all corners of the empire to repopulate Istanbul. Muslims, Christians, Jews, all given homes and security. New mosques rose across the city. New minarets reached toward the sky. The Hagia Sophia received a second stone minaret, becoming more distinctly a mosque with each passing year. A new civilization was taking root in the ruins of the old one. Then Sultan Ahmad I built something that created a scandal. The Sultan Ahmad Mosque, what the world would come to call the Blue Mosque. He gave it 6 minarets. Only the mosque in Makkah had 6 minarets. The ulama were outraged. Sultan Ahmad's solution? He sent money to add a 7th minaret to the Masjid al-Haram in Makkah. The controversy faded. The 6 minarets stayed, and the most famous skyline in the Islamic world was born. The Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque, side by side, their minarets rising together over the Bosphorus, an image that would define Istanbul for 400 years. The 19th century brought something new to the Bosphorus: steamships. Black-funneled paddle-wheel steamboats churning through the strait alongside the traditional Ottoman sailing galleons. The Ottoman Empire, sensing that the world was changing, was trying to modernize. But the empire that had once terrified all of Europe was now being called the sick man of Europe. The magnificent skyline remained unchanged, but the world below it was beginning to shift. By 1900, Istanbul was caught between two worlds. Above, the ancient skyline of Hagia Sophia and Blue Mosque minarets, eternal, unchanged. Below, European steamships, European fashions, European coffee houses, European banks. The Galata Tower stood on the northern shore, a medieval Genoese tower now surrounded by modern European-style commercial buildings. The Ottoman Empire had 1 foot in the Islamic medieval world and 1 foot in the modern European one, and the ground between them was crumbling. In 1934, Ataturk made a decision that broke the heart of every Muslim on earth. The Hagia Sophia, the mosque that Mehmed al-Fatih had prayed in on the day of the conquest, was converted into a museum. Through the mid-20th century, Istanbul grew rapidly. Modern concrete buildings rose on the lower waterfront slopes. New roads cut through the historic fabric. The ancient seawalls, which had protected the city for 1,500 years, were partially demolished to make way for a coastal highway. Progress and preservation pulled against each other. But above all the modern development, the Hagia Sophia dome and the Blue Mosque minarets still dominated the skyline. Some things, it seemed, could not be erased. By 1988, a second bridge spanned the Bosphorus, named for Mehmed al-Fatih himself. The city on both shores had exploded in size. Istanbul, which had perhaps 1 million people in 1950, now had 10 million. Today, it has 16 million, the largest city in Europe, larger than London, larger than Paris. The ancient peninsula, with its historic skyline, now surrounded on all sides by a vast modern megacity. But from the Bosphorus, look up, and nothing has really changed on that skyline. The dome of the Hagia Sophia, the 6 minarets of the Blue Mosque, the Suleymaniye on the ridge, just as they were in 1616.
And here it stands today, the Hagia Sophia, built in 537 CE, still the most extraordinary dome on earth, its 4 minarets calling the faithful to prayer once more.
But from this exact spot on the Bosphorus, watching the afternoon golden light catch those minarets, it will always be the city the prophet Sal described, the city whose commander he called wonderful.
If this moved you, subscribe to Through the Ages. We are rebuilding the history of the Islamic world, one city at a time.